The prison guards dragged Leo Parks Jr. out of his cell, his thin body barely upright. His face was pale, lips cracked, eyes dulled from weeks in the dark. Two men in clean suits waited outside the block. One of them was Agent Martin Grant, a calm, methodical FBI man who'd been hunting Leo for years. Now, at last, he'd come to bring him home. As the agents walked Leo out through the gray corridors of the French facility, Martin looked at the young man, then away. He had chased this ghost across continents. Now, the chase was over. Or so he thought. The story then rewound, flashing back to New Rochelle, New York, a decade earlier. Back then, Leo was just a boy. He idolized his father, Leo Parks Sr., a charming small business owner with a fast smile and quicker words. Leo Sr. knew how to talk to people. He was a man who made strangers feel like old friends in seconds. Young Leo watched and copied everything. His parents seemed happy on the surface. But beneath the Sunday smiles, money problems were piling up. The IRS had caught wind of Leo Sr.'s loose accounting. Fines were coming. Debt collectors started circling. Eventually, the family had to give up their house and move into a small apartment. Leo didn't understand why they were leaving. His parents just told him they were starting fresh. At his new public school, Leo wore a blazer on his first day and walked with confidence. That's all it took. A confused teacher mistook him for a substitute. Rather than correct the error, Leo played along, walking to the front of the class and teaching an entire week of French before anyone caught on. He got in trouble, but he also got attention. And something else. The thrill. Later, Leo watched his father put on his old charm at a local Rotary Club meeting. Leo Sr. was trying to convince a banker to approve a loan, pitching dreams and pulling laughs. But the banker smiled politely, declined, and walked away. Leo Sr. stayed upbeat on the outside, but his eyes told a different story. Back home, things grew colder. One night, Leo saw his mother, Marie, laughing a little too freely with a man named Jack Bowen, a friend from the club. The look in her eyes wasn't the one she gave his father. Soon after, Leo was brought to a lawyer's office. His parents were divorcing. The lawyer leaned across the desk and asked him to choose mom or dad. Leo didn't answer. He ran. Alone in New York City, Leo wandered through streets lit in neon and noise. He was just 15, with no plan, no money, and no place to go. He tried small cons, phony IDs, fake signatures, forged notes. But they were sloppy. He was sloppy. The city didn't care about a kid playing pretend. He needed something bigger. One day, Leo stood outside a tailor shop and watched a group of airline pilots walk past. People smiled at them. They moved with authority. They were trusted. Respected. Leo stepped inside the shop and asked for a Pan Atlantic Airlines uniform. He said he was a pilot who'd lost his suit. The tailor didn't question it. The uniform was ready in 3 days. At the public library, Leo flipped through aviation magazines and manuals. He memorized airport codes, cockpit jargon, and airline procedure. He took notes on takeoff weight limits, radio protocols, and emergency procedures. He watched every pilot he could find. Then he walked into a bank with his first fake payroll check. He was nervous, fidgeting. The teller raised an eyebrow. She looked down, back up. Smiled. She cashed it. Leo left with cash in his pocket, and a racing heart. He was in. At a hotel bar that night, Leo noticed a real flight crew sitting near the piano lounge. He ordered a drink, acted confident, and introduced himself as First Officer Frank Taylor. His charm and uniform did most of the work. They bought him drinks. One stewardess explained the concept of deadheading, how off-duty pilots could fly for free. Leo made mental notes. The next morning, he walked up to the Pan Atlantic counter at LaGuardia Airport, gave a confident smile, and said he was deadheading to Miami. The clerk nodded. Gate C4. He boarded the plane. Over the next few months, Leo perfected the game. He deadhead on flights around the country, lived in hotels, and cashed increasingly convincing paychecks. Each con taught him more. He learned how to walk into any bank with confidence and walk out richer. Meanwhile, at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, Agent Martin Grant received a file on a string of forged Pan-Atlantic checks. Something didn't sit right. These weren't ordinary fakes. They were exact, professional, and consistent. They all seemed to come from different cities but had the same subtle pattern. Martin requested a small team and began the chase. That's when Leo made his first mistake. At a bank in Chicago, he left just minutes before Martin arrived. The agents found the forged check, the signature, and the clerk who remembered the charming young pilot. Martin didn't get mad. He got focused. The game had started. Leo was flying high, literally and figuratively. He started spending freely. He wore expensive suits, tipped too much, and rented penthouse rooms under new names every week. One afternoon, he gifted his father, Leo Sr., a brand new Cadillac, parking it like a trophy in front of his modest apartment. Leo Sr. accepted it with a half-smile, but inside, he was shrinking. His pride, once his armor, had become his cage. He didn't ask where the money came from. He didn't want to know. Leo kept moving. In Miami, he entered a bank branch with an agenda. He wasn't just there to cash checks anymore, he wanted access to the system. So he flirted with a young teller, Susan, who liked the attention. She giggled when he complimented her hair, listened when he asked about how routing numbers worked. By the end of the week, she gave him more than a date. She gave him the internal codes printed on all local checks. It was all he needed. Leo took those numbers to a small printing business in the suburbs. He told them he was a consultant working on a pilot training manual and needed sample checks printed for a financial safety training module. He spoke fast, confidently, using aviation lingo and government jargon. The printer didn't ask many questions. By the end of the day, Leo had a box full of high-quality blank checks with authentic fonts, logos, and watermark paper. Now he could print them himself. By Christmas, Agent Martin Grant had tracked him to a hotel suite in Los Angeles. The suite had been paid in cash. The check trail was fresh. Martin walked the hallway with two local officers, stopping outside the door. He knocked. No answer. Then the door opened from the inside. Leo stood there, in his pilot uniform, holding a clipboard and pretending to be annoyed. "Agent Donnelly, Secret Service," he said, flashing a fake badge. "You guys just interrupted a sting. Counterfeit op. You're late." Martin stared at him. The uniform, the badge, the voice, everything looked real. Leo handed him a folder full of forged evidence, everything carefully staged, and walked right past them, out the door, down the hallway, and into the elevator. By the time Martin realized what had happened, Leo was gone. Again. After that, Leo celebrated. He bought a new wardrobe, upgraded his checks, and moved from cheap hotels to luxury towers. He changed his name every week but never changed his rhythm: move fast, smile often, and don't stay in one city too long. Martin, humiliated but now fully convinced, briefed other FBI offices. He requested more agents, citing the multi-state scope of the case. Other departments laughed at first. How could one kid outsmart so many banks? But they gave him the resources anyway. Leo grew bolder. He started recruiting. At an airport in Atlanta, he hired a group of young women, models mostly, and dressed them in official-looking stewardess uniforms. He walked with them in slow motion through the terminal, drawing every eye in the building. It was a distraction. While people stared, Leo dropped batches of checks at a nearby bank branch. The spectacle worked. No one asked questions. The checks cleared. Leo smiled through it all. Not long after, he tried something new. While pretending to be a pilot on break, Leo wandered into a hospital ER to get a free coffee. But the nurses saw his uniform and mistook him for a doctor. One called him Dr. Connors. Rather than correct her, Leo leaned in. He introduced himself to Brenda, a soft-spoken nurse with large eyes and a shy smile. She told him she had failed the Louisiana bar exam and had dropped out of law school. Her voice trembled when she said it, as if expecting him to laugh. Leo didn't. He told her it didn't matter. She believed him. Back in his motel, Leo began watching old episodes of Medical Center and Dr. Kildare, learning procedures and jargon. He memorized how doctors spoke, how they moved, what they asked during consults. A few days later, he was back in Scrubs. In the hospital, a serious case came in, internal bleeding. Nurses waited for orders. Leo turned to a resident and asked, "Do you concur?" The young doctor looked confused, then nodded. Leo repeated the line to the others, kept his face calm, then walked away. It worked. They assumed he knew what he was doing. In the break room, Brenda and Leo shared late-night coffee. He made her laugh. She told him about her strict parents, about being adopted, about how her father, a well-known prosecutor, had pressured her into law school. Leo listened carefully. He saw the escape she was looking for. He offered it. He told her he loved her, and when she cried, he proposed. Soon, he met her parents. Over dinner, Brenda's father, Harold, grilled him. Leo claimed he had graduated from Columbia Medical School, passed the Louisiana bar, and now worked part-time at the district attorney's office while volunteering at the hospital. Harold wasn't impressed, but he couldn't find a hole in the story. Leo even started showing up to the DA's office in the mornings, walking through halls with a briefcase and fake files. He listened to other lawyers argue cases and repeated their phrases. He memorized legal trivia and court procedures. When someone asked how he passed the bar exam, Leo smirked. "Third time's the charm." No one dug deeper. Brenda beamed at the engagement party. Her family was warming up to Leo. The house was full of guests, food, and music. In the corner, Leo whispered to her about their future: new city, real house, real jobs. He promised her a clean start. But outside, Martin Grant and 2 FBI agents were pulling up the driveway. From the window upstairs, Leo spotted the dark sedans pulling up. The men stepping out weren't guests. They didn't have gifts or smiles. One of them was Agent Martin Grant. He didn't panic. He turned to Brenda, his face calm but his voice low. "I have to go. Right now." Brenda blinked, confused. Leo pressed a folded note into her hand. "Meet me at Miami International, Concourse G, tomorrow afternoon. I'll explain everything." Before she could say anything, he slipped into the guest bedroom. Moments later, he emerged in a pilot uniform, smooth and polished. He walked down the hallway, nodded politely to a few strangers, and stepped out a back door. By the time Martin reached the room, Leo was already gone. That night, down near the train tracks, Leo met Brenda again. She was shaken, still clutching the note. He tried to calm her. Told her it was all going to be okay. That he still wanted to marry her. That they'd start over in Miami. She wanted to believe him. But her hands trembled. She asked questions he couldn't answer. And when the train whistle blew, Leo turned and walked away, expecting her to follow. She didn't. At Miami International Airport, Leo waited in the shadows, watching for Brenda. She never came. And when he saw the agents arrive instead, he knew. She had talked. He didn't blame her. He just pivoted. The trail went cold for a while. Then, Martin called a briefing in a glass-walled FBI conference room. He rolled out a map covered in red pins: Frankfurt, Madrid, Zurich, Milan. The same checks, the same forged logos, the same phantom pilot. Leo was now in Europe. The con had gone international. On Christmas Eve, Martin sat alone in the office. The phones were quiet, the desks empty. Then his line rang. It was Leo. "Do you ever go home, Agent Grant?" the voice said. Martin froze. Then leaned back in his chair. "Merry Christmas, Leo." Leo didn't respond right away. There was noise in the background, maybe music, maybe a cafe. "I don't have anyone to go home to," Leo said finally. "You know," Martin replied. "Neither do I." There was silence. Not cold. Just quiet. Then the line went dead. Martin thought about that call for days. He realized something. Leo wasn't just chasing money. He was chasing something else. a connection, a family, a place to belong. And Martin finally saw the pattern. Leo always called on Christmas Eve. The next year, Martin followed the pattern. In Montrachet, France, a quiet village south of Paris, the trail picked up again. Local gendarmes had flagged a suspicious print shop tied to fake traveler's checks. Martin arrived fast, scanning receipts, packaging slips, and ink-stained workbenches. In the back, surrounded by stacks of forged paper and metal printing plates. There he was. Leo looked up, exhausted, pale, and cornered. He didn't run. He tried one last bluff, talking fast, pretending to be someone else, a translator, a civilian caught in the wrong place. But Martin wasn't listening to the words anymore. He stepped closer, soft but firm. "It's over. You're not alone, Leo. Let's go home." Leo didn't move for a moment. Then he did. At the Marseille airport, in early 1969, U.S. Marshals loaded Leo onto a transport plane. He was thin, dirty, and silent. Martin sat across the aisle, holding a folder in his lap. Halfway through the flight, he leaned over. "I didn't want to tell you like this. But your father died. Fell down the stairs. It was an accident." Leo didn't speak. Then he asked if his mother knew. "She was told," Martin said. Leo leaned back in his seat and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The plane landed at JFK Airport, under gray skies. As the agents prepped for disembarkation, Leo asked to use the bathroom. He was gone within seconds. He'd climbed through the lavatory, slipped into a maintenance corridor, and vanished into the morning crowd. Martin shouted, pushed past officers, ran into the hallway, but it was too late. Again. On a quiet suburban street, Leo stood across the street from a small home. In the window, he saw his mother, Marie, laughing with Jack Bowen. She held a young girl, Leo's half-sister. She looked happy. Whole. Leo didn't knock. He didn't wave. He turned and walked away. Later that week, he walked into a police station in Boston and asked to speak to Agent Martin Grant. When Martin arrived, Leo held out his wrists, ready for cuffs. "I'm done," he said. Leo Parks Jr. was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. No parole. No shortcuts. In his orange jumpsuit, he looked like a different person. Thinner. Quieter. But the clever eyes were still there, watching, calculating. For the first time in years, he had nowhere to go. No lies to tell. No uniforms to hide behind. Just silence and time. Months passed. Then, one afternoon, Agent Martin Grant walked into the prison holding a plain manila folder. He sat across from Leo in a quiet visitor room and slid the folder forward. Inside was a counterfeit check. High quality. Better than most. Martin watched as Leo glanced at it once. "The bank logo is too low," Leo said. "And the cashier signed it in blue ink. That branch only uses black." Martin blinked. "How the hell do you know that?" Leo shrugged. "I used to cash checks there." The next week, Martin returned, with more folders. He wasn't there to taunt Leo. He was offering a deal. "Help us find the real ones," he said, "and we'll get you out of here. Not free, but working. For us." Leo didn't answer right away. The idea of working for the same people who chased him seemed like betrayal. But the prison walls weren't shrinking. They were closing in. Soon after, Leo was quietly transferred out of the prison and into a secure FBI office, tucked behind layers of security and desks. He was given a desk, a badge, and a stack of anonymous fraud cases. Most agents didn't trust him. But Martin stood by him. And the results came fast. Leo could spot details others missed. Bank printer mismatches. Signature patterns. Check number anomalies. Teller handwriting quirks. He wasn't just solving crimes, he was seeing into the minds of other con artists. But the freedom came with limits. He wasn't allowed outside without escort. He wasn't allowed to touch phones. And every door locked behind him. Sometimes, at night, He sat alone in the office staring at an old Pan Atlantic pilot uniform hanging in a locked display case. Not the one he wore, but the one he had copied. The temptation was there. He still wanted to run. One morning, Leo walked down to the airport terminal. Just watched. People came and went. Pilots wheeled bags, kissed wives, grabbed coffee. Children stared in wonder at the uniforms. Leo stood at the edge of the terminal, watching the security gate. No one noticed him. Then a voice behind him. "No one's chasing you anymore." It was Martin. Leo didn't turn. Martin stepped closer. "If you walk away now, that's your choice. But I'm not going to hunt you. Not again." Leo nodded, just once, and walked back to the car. The next day, he showed up early to the FBI office. Wore a tie. Did the work. Didn't try to run again. Over time, the agents warmed to him. Slowly. Carefully. He became less of a prisoner and more of a peer. Years passed. He never returned to crime. Not once. Years went by. Leo Parks Jr. kept showing up at the FBI's Fraud Division office each morning, sharper than ever. He'd combed through cases before most agents had even clocked in. He didn't smile much. He didn't go out to lunch. But his results were impossible to ignore. He could spot a forgery in seconds. And not just checks, contracts, insurance forms, identity documents, even artwork. He knew what made a fake feel real. More importantly, he knew how to stop it. Martin Grant still checked in on him regularly. At first, it was supervision. Eventually, it became friendship. They didn't talk about the past much. They didn't have to. One day, after wrapping up a case involving a massive offshore fraud ring, Martin leaned across Leo's desk. "You know," he said, "you're the only one who ever gave me real trouble." Leo smirked. "You should have walked faster at that hotel in LA. They both laughed, something neither of them did often. Leo's story became something of a quiet legend within the bureau. New recruits were told about the conman turned expert, a man who'd once lived a dozen lives before the age of 21. Some thought it was just a myth. But there he was, every day, behind that desk. Still working. Still helping. Still watching the world like someone who remembered too well what it looked like from the other side. He never returned to crime. He didn't have to. His skills became the very tools that protected banks, airlines, and federal agencies from people like the person he used to be. He was no longer the boy pretending to be a pilot. Or a doctor. Or a lawyer. He was Leo Parks Jr. And this time, he wasn't pretending.